On page 14, the first thing you see is just a little description here of the metric system. It says length is measured in meters. That's the basic unit that is used to measure length. So people's height in the metric system would be some form of meters. Volume is measured in liters. Weight is measured in grams. Now, in the metric system, besides these three basic units, we can take fractions of each one of these units. In the metric system, and this is listed on page 14, we have kilo. These are prefixes that have to go in front of one of these. We could have a kilometer, a kiloliter, or a kilogram. These are all prefixes. They can't be used without using it with one of these words. So kilo, you either have to say kilometer, kiloliter, or kilogram. Hecto, deca, and then you have whatever your basic measurement is, whether it's meters, liters, or grams. Meters is abbreviated with an M. Liters, I use a capital L so you don't think it's a 1. You get used to using a capital L, or at least write it like this, so you don't confuse it with the number 1. And grams is G. These prefixes here, deca means 10. So if I said decaliter, that's 10 liters. Hecto means 100. So a hectogram would be 100 grams. Kilo is 1,000. A kilometer is 1,000 meters. Now these are when we're measuring larger distances or larger weights. When we want to go smaller weights, we have deci, centi, milli, and micro. Deci is abbreviated a D, centi, C, milli, M, micro, MC. Again, these prefixes cannot be used alone. If you have deci, it has to be decimeter, deciliter, decigram. It means 1/10. Deci is 1/10. Centimeter, oops, that's not 1/10. Deci means 1/10. Centimeter is 100th. Millimeter is 1,000th. But a micrometer is 1/1,000,000th. Micro is used in grams sometimes. Micrograms are for drugs that you take in very, very tiny amounts. Now, we need to memorize these prefixes, but we also need to memorize them in order. We don't use hecto and deca very much. So you can memorize kilo, and you really can just leave 2 blanks, because we're not going to be using hecto and deca in here. Then you always have to have your basic unit of measure. Then deci, centi, milli, and we have to do 2 blanks to go to micro. And that's because we skip from 1,000th, we skip 1/10,000th, 100,000th, and we go to a million. If you memorize these in order, these are the easiest way to do conversions in the metric system. If I had to convert 20 decigrams to milligrams. To convert decigram to milligrams, if you look up here in the chart, if you start at decigram, put your finger under decigram. If you're moving to milligram, move from decigram to milligram and count how many steps. Start at deci. It's 2 steps to get to milli. And it's 2 steps to the right. So to convert from deci to milli, I picture my decimal here. If I moved 2 steps to the right on my table, I have to move 2 steps to my right, so I add zeros. Whatever you move on the table, 2 to the right, you move your decimal 2 to the right. So 10 decigram would be 2,000 milligrams. Now, anytime you want to, on a test or a quiz, if you want to write this across the front, and then use that to help you with your conversions. I didn't get very, because I can't hardly see my MC here on the end. If I wanted to convert from milliliters to liters, you put your finger on milliliters, and this box here can be whether we're converting meters, liters, or grams. To move from milli to liters, it's 1, 2, 3 to the left. 1, 2, 3 to the left. So let's say that I had 150 milliliters. It's 1, 2, 3 to the left. So 1, 2, 3 to the left. And remember, when we put a decimal, we always have to put a 0 in front of it. Okay. I'm just going to write that table down again so I can get them all in here. There we go. Now, if I had 100 micrograms, micro is MC, micrograms, and I want to change to milligrams. You put your finger on micro. This is why when we memorize it, we have to have 2 blanks here, because it's 1, 2, 3 steps to the left. 1, 2, 3 steps to the left. I put my decimal, 1, 2, 3 steps to the left. Now, we don't have to put zeros at the end, but if we have a decimal, if there's no number, we have to put a 0 at the front. .03 liters to milliliters. You put your finger on liters. We're moving to milli, so it's 1, 2, 3 steps. 1, 2, 3 steps to the right. 1, 2, so I have to add a 0. 30. Now, if you know another way to convert, forget about it. This way is the easiest, and you'll make a whole lot less mistakes this way than any other way. Some people told you to divide by 1,000 or divide by 100, but you have to remember when to divide, when to multiply, when it's 100. This step method is the easiest way to do the conversions. 2.6 grams to kilograms. We moved from grams, and we left 2 blank spaces, so it's 1, 2, 3 to the left. 1, 2, 3 to the left. So here's my decimal. I have to go 1, add zeros, 2, 3. Now again, if you have a decimal with nothing in front of it, we have to put a 0 there. I didn't put enough zeros there, did I? There we go. The only thing you have to watch on this method is when you move from gram to kilograms, do loops or steps. This is 1, 2, 3 steps. Don't take your finger and go thump, 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 because then you'll go 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. And it's not 4 steps. Count the loops. It's 1, 2, 3. You don't count your starting place. And I see people doing thumping, and they usually move it too many places. Put your finger down and make loops. 1, 2, 3 loops. Okay. 3,700 micrograms to grams. I have to move all the way from micro to gram. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it was to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 0037. You don't put the zeros at the end, but you need one here at the front. Grams to kilograms. How many spaces? 3 to the right or left? 3 to the left. 1, 2, 3. Oh, 0.21 meters to centimeters. Meters to centimeters. Now, the reason you know this is meters and not milli, milli can never appear by itself. Milli has to be in front of meters, liters, or grams. Milli is a prefix. If it's by itself, it has to be a meter. Meter to centimeter is 1, 2 to the right, 21. Meters to centimeters, 1, 2. Meters to centimeters. Is that one okay? Three kilograms to micrograms. Now, has anybody seen this symbol right here? U with a kind of tail on it? That is also used for micrograms, but do not use this. The nursing system has started saying, no, don't use that. It's too easy to confuse it with something else. So if you used to remember this was micrograms, forget about it. We're always going to use the MC for micrograms. Kilogram to micrograms. About as far as we can go. Kilograms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to have to move 9 spaces. I didn't leave my blank big enough. That's because a microgram is a very, very, very tiny amount. Now again, the best way to do conversions within the metric is to memorize this chart. Write it down. As soon as I piss out, sorry. Okay. Well, at least I saw you were all awake. As soon as I pass out the test Monday, if you want to write this across the top, if you've got it memorized in order, write it down so you can count your steps. Okay. Hopefully I won't be doing that other thing in class. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at in converting units is we're going to look at something called the apothecary system. Now, the apothecary system is kind of a strange system because it's only used in some drugs. Apothecary used to mean a pharmacist. So, some drugs are still listed in the apothecary system. The apothecary system, some of the units we have to know are grains. A grain is abbreviated GR. We have to be very careful we notice the difference between grain and gram. A grain is GR. It's used to measure weight in the apothecary system. A grain is approximately a grain of wheat. That's what they first said a grain as, a grain of wheat. So you can imagine a grain of wheat, this little bitty thing. So a grain is just a little bit of weight. Again, it's used to measure drug dosages when we have tiny amounts. This one is used to measure weights. We also have some weights in the apothecary system that are used to measure volumes. For volumes, we have fluid ounces. We have pints, quarts, and gallons. And these pints, quarts, and gallons are the same measurements you use around the house if you do any canning or cooking that uses large amounts. Pints, quarts, and gallons. Now, you don't always have to write fluid ounces in front of it because the only ounces we're going to be doing are measuring volume, so you don't actually have to use ounces. If you do, you can abbreviate it fluid, but spell out the word ounces. There is not an acceptable abbreviation for ounces in the nursing system. If you know that some other places use OZ, we're not supposed to use that in nursing anymore. They passed out just recently a whole list of abbreviations that are not allowed. And OZ, we just have to write out ounces. Pint can be abbreviated PT, quart QT, and gallon GAL. Now, one thing that's kind of different about the apothecary system, in the apothecary system, we always put the label first and then the number. So if I wanted to write down 30 grains, it's always grains 30. If they say, how do you write 30 grains in the apothecary system? You would have to write grains 30. And those that are in the nursing program here, that first math test you take, one of it is a problem like this. I don't know if it's grains or what, but it says, write 30 grains in the apothecary. You have to know it's grains 30, or pints 2, or quarts 4. Whatever it is, we have to write the label first. So if I wanted to write 5 gallons in the apothecary system, well, that's 4 gallons. If I wanted to write 4 gallons, in the apothecary system, we would have to list gallons 4. It's just a rule. I don't know why they do that, but they've always done that in the apothecary system. Put the label and then the amount. So we have some conversions we have to memorize within the apothecary system. Fluid ounces 16 is pint 1. And if you're looking on page 16, this is written down, but I have it written down wrong. It should be fluid ounces 16 is pint 1. We should always write the label in front of the number. So the next one I have there says 2 pints equal 1 quart. How am I going to write that in the apothecary system? Pint 2. Quart 1. So even though I have it wrong, we're having practice of rewriting it in the apothecary system. What's the next one going to be?
Quart 4. Gallon 1.
Gallon 1. And we will need to memorize these conversions right here. 16 ounces in a pint, 2 pints in a quart, 4 quarts in a gallon. Now, this is the only one we memorize within the apothecary system, but sometimes we have to change apothecary to metric. When we have to convert apothecary to the metric system in dry, anything that is dry, that means we're measuring weight. 1 grain is 60 milligrams. So it should be grain 1 is equal to 60 milligrams. The next conversion says 15 grains is 1 gram. 15 grains is 1 gram. Again, we have to watch real careful with GR and G. If you're not careful, you're going to think, oh, but I wrote it wrong, didn't I? Okay, holler when I do something wrong. Tonight seems to be a good one. 15 grains is 1 gram. That might help you notice the difference between grains and grams. If it comes first, it's a grain. If it comes after, it's a gram. Ounce 1 is 30 grams. Pounds 2.2 is 1 kilogram. That's another abbreviation that they said to go away with. So pounds and ounces, get used to writing them out. And there's no easy way to do it besides just sit down and memorize these. 1 grain is 60 milligram. Grains 15 is 1 gram. 1 ounce is 30. 2.2 pounds is 1 kilogram. If you can memorize it by saying it to yourself, say it over and over. If you need to memorize it by writing it down, it's just whatever it takes for you to memorize it. You may have to write it down 20 times and say it to yourself as you write it. But these just have to be memorized. Now, this is when we are measuring something dry. We're measuring weight. When we have anything that is wet, we're actually measuring volume. Wet says fluid ounce 1 is 30 milliliters. Now, everybody doesn't do this, and mostly you're going to see it written ml. But I always use that so that there's no question about whether it's a 1 or an L. But again, most people write it like this. Most time you see it in print, it's going to be ml. I just do that so you can tell an L from a 1. 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. Now again, I said you can write fluid on there, but you don't have to write fluid. You know if you pick up something and it's wet that it's a fluid ounce. And you know if it's wet, you can go to milliliters. If it's dry, you can go to grams. So actually, I don't always write the fluid because you know whether it's wet or dry when you're working with it. 1 pint is 500 milliliters. 1 quart is 1,000 milliliters. And 1 gallon is 4,000 milliliters. So we have to memorize the metric chart. We have to memorize this one right here, which is apothecary. Then we have to measure the dry and the wet metric to apothecary. It just takes a little time to sit down and memorize these, but memorize them is the only way we're going to be able to do the conversions. Right. When I give you a test, you can write those down first thing. So if you want to, start with a blank sheet of paper. When I pass out the quiz, show me that it's blank. And as long as it starts out blank, then you can write all of this down. And usually that's the easiest way to do it, is write it all down and then look at it during the test. I believe so. I have not heard anything from them, and usually if students do it and they get in trouble, they tell me about it. So I'm going to assume that that's okay.
We didn't hear the question.
Okay. The question was, if you're going to be able to, when you take a math test in the nursing department, write down these tables. And as far as I know, yes. Whenever you take a math test in the nursing department, you have to have it memorized, but if you start off with a blank sheet of paper, that you can write them down. So if that's the way you do your conversions, rather than just remember it from your head, a lot of times it's easier to write those tables down and then do your conversions looking at the tables. But you can write those down on my test and on the test in the nursing departments. Is that okay? Okay. If I want to change 60 grains to grams. Now, we want to notice that there are 2 conversions here for grains. There's a grain to grams. There's also a grain to milligrams. We use whichever one we need. If I want to go to grams, don't go to milligrams and then change it. If you're going to go to grams, use 15 grains is 1 gram. So don't do 2 conversions. Don't go to milligrams and then grams. If the problem says grains to grams, use the conversion that says 15 grains is 1 gram. Even though we also had one that said 1 grain is 60 milligrams. Don't use milligrams unless the problem asks for milligrams. If the problem asks for grams, use this conversion. And the easiest way to do conversions is write down what you have memorized from the tables. 15 grains is 1 gram. Then we're going to make a proportion out of it. If I have 60 grains, put grains under grains. This comes straight from the table. Put grain under grain. So here's our X. So when I multiply, I have 15X is equal to 60 times 1. And then take 60 divided by 15. And 60 divided by 15 is 4. Now your answer needs to be labeled 4 grams. You can label it down here, or if you put your answer in the blank, the gram is already there. But either fill in the blank or make sure you put the label on it. If I want to convert 250 milliliters to pints, what is the conversion from pint to milliliters? $500 milliliters. Again, write down the conversion, whatever it is. This comes straight from the table that you've memorized. Write it down. Then if the number you know is milliliters, put it under milliliters. Here's where you want to keep up with the labels so you know where the 250 goes here or here. 1 pint is 500 milliliters, so 250 milliliters is X. 250 equals 500X. When I divide, this is going to reduce to 1/2. Now, we have a rule about fractions and decimals. If your answer is in the apothecary system, it has to be a fraction. But if your answer is in the metric system, it has to be a decimal. Now that's because anything you measure in the metric system is marked off 7/10, 8/10, 9/10. But when you go to look for something in the apothecary system, it's going to be labeled 1/2 a pint. So we have to write it 1/2 a pint, not 0.5. They're the same thing, but this is one of the rules that they're very picky about. The apothecary system, you always write it as a fraction. You never put the apothecary as a decimal. Okay. Grains, 1 1/2 to milligrams. If we're going grains to milligrams, use the conversion from grains to milligrams. Don't go grains to grams. What is the conversion from grains to milligrams? 1 grain is 60 milligrams. So I have 1 1/2 grain, or grain, is X. If you keep the label, write down what you know from the table, keep the label, you'll know whether 1 1/2 goes here or here. So X is 1 1/2 times 60. Now you can multiply it out using fractions, or is your answer going to be a fraction or a decimal? If your answer is going to be a decimal, then you can do your arithmetic as decimal. But if you look and your answer has to be a fraction, do your arithmetic as a fraction. So here, since we want a decimal answer, you can multiply 1.5 times 60, and that gives you 90. 0.6 grams to grains. We have a conversion. What's the conversion from grains to grams?
Grain 15 equals 1 gram.
1 gram. 15 grains is 1 gram. So 0.6 goes under the grams, X. If you multiply 15 times 0.6, you get 9. Now, if you do this on your calculator, 15 times 0.6, it tells you 9. But if you ever do the arithmetic by yourself, and I get 0, 3, 9, 1 decimal place, don't write your answer 9.0. Instead of 9.0, we would write the answer as 9, because not only is it simplest, but there's no way to confuse that for 90. If you write 9.0, it's possible to confuse that for 90. So when there's just a 0, don't put a 0, just put it as 9. It's simpler and you can't get confused. It would be an apothecary answer. It'll always start off with a decimal if it's metric. But when I multiplied and I saw it was a whole number, it was okay. If I would have multiplied and got 9.5, I would have had to change it to 9 5/10, 9 1/2. But I went ahead and did the arithmetic here because they gave it as a decimal. And since it turned out to be a whole number, there wasn't a problem. But if it was a decimal, I would have had to change it to a fraction for my answer. Okay. $1,000 milligrams to grains. What is the conversion for grains to milligrams? One grain is 60 milligrams. So 1,000 milligrams is X. 1,000 equals 60X. When I divide by 60, I'm going to look up here and say, does my answer need to be a decimal or a fraction? Because it's apothecary, if my answer needs to be a fraction, I'm going to go 1,000 over 60. The zeros will reduce. Can reduce by 2. 3 goes in there. 1, 6, and 2/3. If you do it by the calculator, you're going to get a decimal that doesn't convert exactly. So, if your answer needs to be a fraction, do the arithmetic as a fraction. Where when I had to divide, I divided as a fraction and did not go to my calculator. If you go to your calculator and give me 6.6 or 6.7, I will take off. I won't count it totally wrong, but I will take off because apothecary system always has to be a fraction.
How did you just get the 603?
Here, I just reduced. I divided top and bottom by 2.
Oh.
I could change it to a whole number and then reduce, but the arithmetic's a little bit easier. I divided by 2 and then got 16 2/3. Okay. 16 2/3. divided 3 into 50. It went one time. Because I reduced the 100 over 6.
Oh.
I divided 2 into both of those. And then that's the reason I said you can't do it on your calculator. You won't get the right answer.
Oh, thank you.
What is the conversion from grams? I did it again, didn't I? Grams to ounce.
What is it?
Grams to ounce. Do we not have a gram to ounce?
30 grams, 1 ounce.
Oh.
Is that?
Yes, we're going from apothecary to metric. It's grams. Oh, so it was right the first place. I'm sorry. Let me try this again. 45 grams to ounce. Sorry, I had it written down right the first time. Grams to ounce. So what's the conversion from grams and ounces? 30 grams, 1 ounce is 30 grams. Now, it doesn't matter which one you write first. The 45, though, has to go under the grams. So 45 is 30x. At the point you divide, this is where you ask yourself fraction or decimal. Which one does this one need to be? This one needs to be a fraction. So I'm going to 45 over 30, 1 15/30, 1 and 1/2. This time, if you went to your calculator and got 1.5, if you remembered to change it, you were going to be okay. But that's not always going to be the case when it rounds off. So that's the reason if you want a fraction, do the arithmetic yourself. Don't go to the calculator. Okay. (1/60th) grain to microgram. Now, here's one where we do not have a conversion from grain to microgram. So if it's grain to microgram, we're always going to use the grain to milligram and then move the decimal. So if it's grain to microgram, we have to use 1 grain is 60 milligrams. We don't have a microgram, but milligram's the closest thing on the chart to microgram. So if I have over here 1/60th of a grain, one times x is 1 over 60 times 60 over 1. But what should this be labeled now? I've just converted it so far to milligrams, because that's all the conversion I had was to milligrams. Now we're going to have to think of the metric Milligram to microgram, 1, 2, 3 to the right. We go back to our grams, decigram, centigram, milligram. Milligram to micro is 3 to the right. Now, anytime you have a number like 1,000, if you put a comma there, keep turning the light off. If you put a comma, you make absolutely sure I can tell that's a comma and not a 1.000. So, exaggerate your commas because you don't want to make a chance of me messing up.
But we don't have to put a comma.
You do not have to put a comma. But if you do, make sure I can tell it is a comma. Okay. $30 milligrams to gram. What's the conversion that has grains in milligrams?
60 milligrams.
It's 15 grams, so it's grains to milligrams. Milligrams.
Somebody needs to turn their button off because there's a lot of static over here. We can't hardly hear you.
I don't know. Let me go to them just a second and see if I can tell whose it is.
Sounds like they're erasing their paper.
Oh. Can y'all see the switch on there? Everybody just tap yours and see if we can find out who it's doing.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you find out whose was on? Oh, he found out how to turn them on? Is anybody else's on?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just go around the room and silently say 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, not silently, but quietly say 1, 2, 3, 4. Silently. And see if we can pick up who says something. Oh, okay. Could y'all hear a number very loud?
No.
You couldn't hear one of the numbers?
The very last one.
The last one, well, he spoke louder. Is it on?
Yes. Yes.
No.
No. Well,
That's it. That's it.
who moved? Somebody moved. You did. Oh. I bet. Is that it? Okay,
That
just a
was
minute.
it.
Okay. There's an extra mic here, and I'm putting my paper on top of it. It was me.
That's
That's
it.
it right there.
That's it.
Fraction. It's right there in front.
Okay, have I got it now? Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. That one was me. I forgot I had a second mic here. Okay. Where am I? 30 micrograms to grain. 1 grain is 60. So 30. 1 times 30 is 60x. Now again, ask yourself, fraction or decimal? We want this fraction, so we go 30 over 60. You can cancel out your zeros. $200 micrograms to grains. Again, the micrograms is the only one that we don't have a conversion. We don't have a conversion from micrograms to grains. So we're always going to use the milligrams anytime we see a microgram. So we have to go back to the metric system. Go back to that table on the metric. And what do we have to do to move microgram to milligram? We're going on the metric system. Micro to milli is how many steps? 3 to the left. 3 to the left. So I'm really converting 0.2 milligrams. So now I have a conversion from milligrams to grains. Is 60 milligrams. So 0.2 is X. Now, do I want my answer to be a fraction or a decimal? If I want my answer to be a fraction, I have to go 0.2 divided by 60. We cannot leave it in this form. We cannot leave a decimal over a fraction. So what we have to do is think of multiplying the top and the bottom by 10. If you multiply by 10, it's going to move this decimal over one place. You can multiply anything as long as you multiply the top and bottom by the same thing. Multiplying by 10 moves your decimal over one place. Move your decimal over one place on the bottom. Instead of thinking of multiplying by 10, think of if you move your decimal to the right one place on top, move your decimal to the right one place on bottom. And that's just to get rid of the decimal. One place on top, one place on bottom. Then we can reduce that. So I have 1/300th of a grain. If we want the answer to be a fraction, we have to work with fractions. Okay, let's just say if I had 0.1 over 60. If I need to move my decimal 2 places on the top, I move my decimal 2 places on the bottom. But we take care of the decimal before we try to reduce or anything else. Take care of the decimal and then see what we have as a fraction. The homework tonight will be pages 15 and 17. But you have to memorize the tables on 14 and 16. We will have a quiz Monday, and you'll have to memorize the metric system, you'll have to memorize the apothecary, and the metric to apothecary. You'll have to memorize these plus practice on the conversions. Any questions? Okay. We'll see you Monday.
Thank you. Thank you for the card. You're welcome. Have a happy birthday since we won't see you. Yeah, I will.
Uh-huh.
Be careful. You too.
Okay. Right, you do your multiplication. Yeah, that was fine too. That's the way you have to do it. Exams first. Just using your Okay, you do 1/300 over 1. You have to go to milligrams first. And the conversion is 1 grain is 60 milligrams. You can't use the decimal.
That's what I started. Then I arrived to
Okay, so go ahead and do this first. Don't worry about anything with the metric until later, because that's just a decimal move.
Okay.
So go ahead and move
Get my
these,
answer
and then
what
do your
makes that?
decimal.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the easiest way to do the metric.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to talk to you about, I don't know if you've had this happen in any previous semesters, but we're in the TNSA, the Student Nurses Association, and state is coming up, sorry.
We're talking, I'm sorry.
No, state's coming up, and it's the 15th, but we noticed, thank goodness for one, there's no quiz and there's not a test.
Okay.
But we would be gone, is that gonna be, I mean, I know that's not great, but, I mean,
What you need to do is see if there's some time you can come see me.
okay.
So y'all be gone all of that.
Would,
I mean,